always going to meet people who run their mouths. Okay, but what are we going to do about that? Are we all going to let this one loser run the show? I'm annoyed that everyone saw this happening, knew exactly what Anna was doing, and everyone's like, yeah, Anna kind of did this. As though it's happening in a vacuum, in some kind of a bubble. Sorry, I can't get in. I can't help. You stood there and watched it happen? Yeah, it was really weird how Anna went after that girl. You know what's even weirder? That you didn't say anything at the time to help that poor girl. Where is our moral fiber? Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Denise. We're going to keep going in Front Row, the biography of Anna Wintour by Jerry Oppenheimer. Now, we, to this point, have established the fact that Anna comes from a pretty privileged family. Her mom came from money in Boston. Her dad is well positioned at the newspaper where he works. And so she can really pretty much have anything her way. They give her a lot financially, but they also give her a lot with freedom. She has had her own apartment since she was 14 or 15 in the servants' quarters of her parents' house. It's got its own entrance and exit, and she's been able to come and go as she will. She, at 15 years old, was going to parties at a Playboy mansion. What? You know, so it's like her parents aren't loving it, but they also aren't stepping in. They're just sort of like, well, let the chips fall as they may. Anna's got to learn somehow. So Anna's been over there getting a street education, and she cares about fashion. She cares about who and what and where is most important to be seen socially. She knows all the hot spots, but she's been getting a street education and could care less about her actual academic education. So when she has a bit of a kerfuffle at school where she shows up with a super short skirt and is told for the umpteenth time no, and the headmistress goes so far as to publicly humiliate her, I mean, Anna didn't need any more excuses not to want to be at this place. So after she's been publicly humiliated, she's like, well, I'm not going back there. Her parents don't seem to have any true drive to insist that she finish her education. They're like, okay, fine. We'll help you get like a work study thing going over at Harrods. Maybe you can become a buyer. And that would have been a legitimate job. It's strange to me because she says she really cares about fashion, and becoming a buyer at Harrods would have been a legitimate line of work in fashion. But I feel like she loved the fashion scene, but the work part of it was not that interesting. Up to this point, we have heard nothing about her personality that would suggest that we are talking about the future editor of American Vogue. Nothing about her has been about her love of magazines, her love of writing, an astute sense of the job of an editor, even though her father was an editor and her best friend's dad was an editor, and she knew what was expected of an editor. She had never shown any interest in working for her dad. She had no interest in working at an actual paper. She wanted fun jobs. She liked working at boutiques and things like that. But she didn't really want to do the work behind the fashion. So it's sort of surprising to me that she ends up becoming this editor of Vogue. She also didn't have a lot of female friends, and something that people talk a lot about is the fact that she didn't really like women. She loved men, and men loved her. I think to this point we're all wondering why. The pictures we see of young Anna are just not pictures of somebody who would stop me in the street. But then again, I mean, I'm a straight woman. I don't know. I don't know what is alluring about this girl. Maybe it's one of those things that pictures can't capture the essence of the person. The reason that everyone is enthralled with Anna, I can't seem to get a hold of that. I can't seem to understand it. I've not seen one picture where I'm like, oh, it makes sense now. No. She just looks like a kid to me. And everyone just keeps telling me, oh no, she was so alluring. There was almost like this dominatrix thing with that bob. And I'm like, that's the haircut of a 5-year-old. I don't get it. I think it's kind of more twisted that all these men want a woman with a haircut of a 5-year-old. Bangs and a bob? I mean, all I know is that when I was in kindergarten, that was the haircut we all had. All right. Let's keep going. Let's find out. When is she going to rise through the ranks or get a job that makes sense as to what she's about to do later? Or, I don't know, show some kind of aptitude for her future endeavors? This chapter is entitled Making the Masthead, so maybe this is when we're going to find out some information. The education of Anna Wintour as fashion magazine editor began with the dawn of the glitter, glam, and disco 70s at Harper's Bazaar, once Britain's premier couture monthly. It was in the process of becoming hipper by merging with a magazine called Queen, which had become the irreverent, witty, and trendy fashion must-read of swinging London. With the deal in the works, the word had gone out. The combined magazine was looking for new hires, especially a fashion assistant, the lowest paid job in the business. But Anna didn't need or care about the paycheck. She was far more intrigued with being around hot fashion, cool people, and a hip environment. In early January 1970, she arrived at the magazine's offices for an interview with the editor, Jennifer Hawking, a former model, who was a bit in the dark about the identity of this fabulous-looking fashionista, sporting Missoni, with the fringe over her eyes. When I took her on, I had no idea who she was, recalls Hawking, who, because Anna looked so young, thought she was about 17. She said something about her father being a journalist, and as I can never remember anybody's name, it didn't connect with me that he was the Charles Wintour. Hawking also wasn't aware that it was Wintour working behind the scenes who got Anna in the door. Obviously. If only we all had such influential fathers who paved the way time and time again. But you know what? Actually, I'm glad we don't. Because every single one of us who's ever had a bit of success that we've earned by the blood, sweat, and tears of our own body can take pride in the ownership of the things that we've gained. Whereas Anna, I feel like, can only ever, at the end of the day, circle back around and know in her heart, if it weren't for old daddy, I wouldn't be here. I suppose there's a spiritual element to the fact that we could all say if it weren't for God, we wouldn't be here, so I guess there's that. But I'm talking about earthly dads here. Anyway, Jennifer Hawkins was satisfied that this new girl would work out. Anna struck her as quite reserved, had an extraordinary look, and unlike other girls she'd recently interviewed, had neither asked nor cared about company benefits. She didn't know at the time that Anna, unlike Hawking herself, who made most of her own clothes, had family money. We weren't looking for anyone sensational, Hawkins continues, just someone who could work well with other people and get on with it. Besides, the fashion department was a very small part of the magazine, which was more generalized in those days. The department took up a very small area at the end of the office, with a closet for clothing and other accoutrements. As Laura Pank, one of the editors, notes, fashion was kind of a bit that we had to tolerate. The editorial was much more important. And so Hawking hired Anna, who had even beaten out an applicant with more experience from British Vogue. Years later, Anna said her start in the fashion world was virtually predestined. I think being Charles Wintour's daughter probably got me my first interview and my first job. She also boasted that she had bluffed her way through the interview, something Hawking hadn't caught, by claiming she could handle the fashion shoots, though she had no prior fashion magazine experience. She probably thought that because she dated that fashion photographer, like, now she had that in the bag. Like, oh, but I mean, I've been around, like, I've been on a shoot, so, like, I can handle it, I can run it, I know the people. No, you dated somebody. You slept with the guy who did it. I don't know if that qualifies. I mean, even the book goes on to say she did have a little experience, having lived with Stephen Boproff, who had shot for Queen and having modeled twice before, and having posed as a trendy bird in London's hottest club since she was a teen, as part of her nightlife world. Anna probably knew a bit more about what was required in a shoot than the next girl in line. Modestly, she later asserted that she didn't see a future for herself in the world of Harper's and Queen. I just sort of fell into magazines, she maintained. So much of what happened to me has happened by chance. There was no master plan. This was a time when the fashion magazines were widely regarded by one's mothers as finishing schools for girls of a certain background and a certain name. One had fun there, but one dabbled in the business in anticipation of marriage and, all being well, a large house somewhere in the English countryside. But that's not the way Jennifer Hawking viewed what she quickly saw as her very clever, incredibly organized, sewed-together, quietly driven, sometimes terrifying new hire. Anna's name first appeared far down on the masthead as one of the 3 fashion assistants in the March 1970 issue, whose cover featured the Anne Boleyn face, a summer-tanned image of Elizabethan beauty. She landed on her feet her very first day on the job and never stopped running, and never looked back to see whom she left in her dust. The Wintour girl didn't strike Hawking as a dilettante, as were some of the others on staff. From the beginning, she saw someone driven, determined, and ambitious. Anna's co-workers endured her, some with awe, others with contempt, and still others with fear and alarm. She had this incredible brain, and I used to think that it would be amazing to meet her when she was 35, because she was too mature for her age, observes Hawking. She was so organized. She would make business appointments for lunch when the rest of us were sort of sitting around twiddling our thumbs. She was just so together. With most young people, it's, oh, I forgot this, oh, I forgot that. There was none of that nonsense. She was very quick at picking up things. If you said something to her, you knew she'd take it in, because next time she was talking about something, she'd say, "Oh, such and so," and I'd remember, "I told you that." Just extraordinary. Willie Landels, a creative, perceptive, and gentle man, who had been promoted as editor but handled the duties of art director at the same time, felt from the first day he was introduced to Anna that her ambition was obvious, and she was very determined to succeed. There were other girls, he notes, who were more talented, who had amazing taste and were chic, but didn't have that incredible drive that Anna had. Like a businessman who is really successful, who only looks in one direction and goes for it. Anna had that. This total conviction that she was aiming for the top job. But Landels had his qualms about her, too. She had very precise ideas about clothes, a very good sense of quality, but nothing adventurous, always rather conventional. I didn't see her as being very original, but was very much in the mainstream, which made her write later for Vogue, which was hardly revolutionary. Her intelligence? Well, obviously she's no fool. People like Anna, who are so beamed at something, have an intelligence that's highly developed in one direction. The whole energy goes into one thing. In her case, it was succeeding. At the same time, the editor found her to be a poor communicator, in a business where communication is key. It was very difficult when she did a feature story to get out of her why she did it, why she would do one story over another, because she was not very articulate. He also was concerned about her being a team player because she was rather cool. She didn't smile, wasn't very open, wasn't very friendly. Nevertheless, it was not long before Anna began to accompany Hawking on photo shoots and to the collections, where the fashion editor privately began calling her young assistant the bacon slicer because of her cutting and critical manner. I sat next to her at some of the shows in Italy and Paris, and the terrible things she used to say about people, nasty things, and no expression would alter her face. She wouldn't sort of indicate she was saying these extraordinarily cutting and caustic things. She was just so pin-sharp and so cruel. That's terrifying. Just sitting there unsmilingly saying the most horrific things, but nothing in your person would indicate that you understand what you're saying. I mean, it's one thing for somebody to have sort of a straight face when they say, silly things, like as a form of humor, but this almost sounds evil. On one occasion, Anna, to Hawking, quietly lit into Ernestine Carter, a doyenne of fashion journalism in Britain, who had worked for Harper's Bazaar and had written several books on high fashion, with introductions by Diana Vreeland, the legendary and influential American fashion editor of Harper's Bazaar, and later editor-in-chief of what would become Anna's Vogue. Ernestine was at one of the shows with some fabulous American journalists, and they were both very tiny women whose feet never touched the ground, and Anna made very cutting comments about them, Hawking said. I had never come across anyone, and I don't think I've met anyone since, who was so bitchy and sharply critical. Anna's attitude also caused problems for the magazine with more than one design house. Still a neophyte, but a neophyte with fangs, she'd flounce into some of the lesser-known houses looking for clothing to feature, flip through the racks, and then declare, "There's nothing here." Her caustic visits sparked irate calls to Hawking from vociferous complaining designers with deflated and bruised egos. Somebody might have been brave enough to tell her to be a little bit more politic, says Hawking, who was afraid to confront Anna, fearful of her wrath. I was the fashion editor, and this was something I wouldn't do, even if I hated the clothes. You sort of say, "Oh, well, we're not doing blue this year." Later, Anna would toss out one very devastating word, rubbish, to describe something that she didn't like, and strong men and thick-skinned women would fall like lumps of clay. She was very much to the point, notes Hawking, and very clear thinking. I'm sure she didn't then, and doesn't care now what people think of her, because she would not have been able to do what she managed to do with her career. She's so single-minded, and basically she's probably right all the time as well. Is she right? This is a woman who's had the same haircut since she was 15. The guy who said that she was unimaginative when it came to fashion could not have been more right. I mean, honestly, when you look at what Anna Wintour wears, it's always very, very, very safe. She's not a risk taker. I've seen her mix some patterns sometimes, which honestly looks heinous. Who is this person that everyone was letting this 21-year-old just drop them with, "That's rubbish"? Well, who cares? Your personality is rubbish. I'd rather wear a rubbish dress I can take off than have a personality I couldn't. Gosh. Anna was part of a team of several fashion assistants, one of whom she regarded with seemingly irrational and utter contempt. The young woman was the daughter of a well-placed London publicist and a friend of Jennifer Hawking's. Anna basically, destroyed this girl, who felt very inefficient by comparison, declares Hawking. Anna was being Anna, just being cleverer than anyone else, and defeated this one girl. I think somehow she puts the evil spell on people. I couldn't agree more. There's something odd about somebody like this. Somebody who's so absolutely out of control, and everybody just falls to them with such fear over this brand of contempt. How does that work? How do you, I don't know, like younger me could really be taken down by somebody who I thought had the authority to tell me what to do, but I have never in all my life felt that I had to fall to the authority of some young, sharp-tongued little bitch. I'm sorry, what? Sit back down. I don't understand these adults feeling like this fashion assistant had the ability or the right to take me down. I would just love to meet this person. Okay, anyway, another of the fashion assistants on the team, Jilly Murphy, who had come to Harper's Bazaar before Anna with some experience as a stylist for photographers like Richard Avedon, remembers clearly how Anna made the other girl's life a living hell. It was a conflict of personalities, explains Murphy, who had been assigned by Hawking early on to take Anna under her wing and show her the ropes. Anna found the other girl to be a weaker personality, and I wouldn't have thought Anna liked that. Occasionally, someone comes into your party that you don't get on with, and that obviously happened with Anna and this other girl. From day one, they didn't get on. Anna made nasty comments to the girl, put her down in front of her colleagues, and claimed she was incompetent. Anna made the poor young woman's life miserable, and for no apparent reason except she enjoyed bullying those who couldn't fight back. What in the world's wrong with everybody else in that room? Explain to me how you watch a colleague be put down irrationally, and you know it's irrational, by this person with the acid tongue in their head. Let's fight fire with fire, my friends. Young acid tongue Anna wants to put someone down. Let me tell you what, right now, let's all rise up against. I don't understand how one bully runs the place. That's one person who can't shut their mouth. One person's mouth versus all of our mouths, please. How are we going to let this happen? How are we going to be so morally bankrupt? Where's our backbones that you would watch a colleague and you all knew that Anna was targeting this person, and everyone in this room, everyone's going to be like, oh, Anna's kind of mean. Look how Anna's going after that girl. Look how you're not even standing up. That, to me, is the bigger issue here. You're always going to meet people who run their mouths. Okay, but what are we going to do about that? Are we all going to let this one loser run the show? Apparently, because then she went up to Vogue and just ran that show. Man, I'm annoyed that everyone saw this happening, knew exactly what Anna was doing, and everyone's like, yeah, Anna kind of did this. As though it's happening in a vacuum, in some kind of a bubble. Sorry, I can't get in. I can't help. You stood there and watched it happen? Yeah, it was really weird how Anna went after that girl. You know what's even weirder? That you didn't say anything at the time to help that poor girl. Where is our moral fiber? Anyway, because of the infighting, Hawking had to take out time from her relevant duties to trim Anna's sharp claws. Thank God. Jennifer would have to take Anna for lunch to have a talk. And then she would have to take the other girl and her mother to lunch to kind of make things sweeter, to make the relationship work, because we were a team, declares Murphy. I liked Anna. I liked her firmness. But some people were terrified of her. She was quite cutting. But she wasn't as tough as what she grew into, as what she became later. Yeah, because nobody ever stopped her. This Jennifer taking her out for a walk and being like, let's try to be nicer. Let's use kind words. Let's fire your ass. You don't deserve to be here if you're going to cut people down like that. Okay. Landell says the other girl was sweet, but that Anna absolutely beat her down and literally drove her out of the magazine. Anna didn't fear competition from her, but rather was disgusted by her weakness, which brought out the bully in her. Unlike the defeated and victimized girl, Murphy was a fighter who stood up for herself and therefore wasn't going to let Anna get to her. Good, finally. It made Jilly basically investigate the enemy, notes Hawking. She wanted to know what made Anna tick. She even managed to get Anna to invite her to stay overnight at her house. She got in under the radar, and I've always been absolutely amazed by that, because no way would I have been brave enough to do that with Anna. There was no way Jilly was going to be destroyed like the other girl. Well, who, by the way, is this Jennifer Hawking that she should be so kowtowed by this young whippersnapper who just showed up on the scene with the mouth in her head? I'm sorry, you need to be quiet and sit down. You don't know anything. I hired you. Well, while there were enormous differences in their lifestyles, Anna and Murphy bonded, or at least Murphy thought they had, though Anna never let her hair down. But she acted friendly. When Murphy was hospitalized for a brief time, Anna trekked to the blue-collar London suburbs to visit her. Afterwards, Murphy wondered about Anna's motives. Yeah, probably to find out where you came from so she could, lodge a bunch of bombs at you later on about how you didn't deserve to be with the upper-class elite, how you didn't deserve to be here because you'd come from some kind of a slum. Because she couldn't afford private care, Murphy was treated in one of Britain's national health hospitals, the kind of public institution someone of Anna's social standing would never have seen the inside of. She was curious, not only to see how I was, but to see what a national health hospital was like, says Murphy. I'll never forget, she said, "It's like real life." I didn't think she had that human element. On another occasion, Murphy had a chum whose boyfriend was in prison. She'd mentioned it in passing to Anna, whose eyes lit up. She was interested to know what the inside of a prison looked like. So she actually went to visit him. I didn't even go. But that's what her curiosity was like. She just wants to slum. She's just socially curious. And she wants to gawk at people like they're animals in a zoo. As she got to know Anna, Murphy was surprised to find that she had very few close female friends. And as her career took off, she adds, her circle of friends took off as well. Back then, Anna's posse consisted of Murphy and another very ambitious young woman named Joan Juliette Buck, who years later would become editor of French Vogue and a contributing writer to American Vogue under Anna, where the two had an up-and-down relationship. We were like the Three Musketeers, Murphy recalls fondly. Joan's an American, and I met her through Anna, and then we just all hung out together, liked the same hip things, looking for things that were new. Still, Vivian Lasky remained Anna's closest friend, but she was in the United States pursuing her undergraduate degree at Radcliffe, while Anna was getting her real-life degree on the job. Murphy didn't come from money, was kind of a free spirit, and was a couple of years older than Anna. Like Anna, though, she had not gone to college, and they were both size 8. If they were going to a party, Anna often lent Murphy some of the expensive designer clothing from her vast and always updated wardrobe. Anna used to have all the designer things, so I got all the leftovers. If she got fed up with something, as she often did, she'd give it to me. Another beneficiary of Anna's largesse was Liz Walker, Willie Landell's young deputy art director, who thought of Anna as a fairy godmother. Though she saw her as distant, frozen-faced, private, and rather determined, she also felt that Anna was incredibly generous in a quiet sort of way by giving away outdated pieces, usually no more than 6 months old, from her wardrobe. We were all paid virtually nothing, Walker says, and Anna was probably the only person on our block who had a private income. And every season she would get rid of her clothes that she had worn, some of the things maybe once. She used to have a really amazing figure, really great boobs, and quite a tiny waist, and we were sort of the same size, about the same height, about 5'5", classic size 8 to 10, with a very slight-looking frame, continues Walker, who had an eye for such detail, going on to become executive fashion and beauty editor at British Marie Claire. Anna would pass on her clothes, but she'd do it in a really charming way, not in the, I am the rich girl giving my clothes to you. She would choose things she thought you might like or would suit you. It was really done in a very gracious way. Well, that's nice. It is nice to finally hear something nice, because up until this point, I've not really cared for this girl. So it's nice that she could be really kind about it. And if I was going to be cutting and hateful, I would say that she, in her own way, was showing you what she thought you should have been wearing all along. But I'm not going to say that because I'm going to believe that this person who was really there and who really experienced it felt that it was done in a kind way. Giving away her cast-offs became part of Anna's modus operandi, something she did throughout her life. Some, with a critical point of view, thought that it was her way of securing loyalty or buying friendship from the beneficiaries of her generosity. Whatever the motive, it was also a quick and easy way to make room in her closets for the new lines. None of us were paid much, but Anna had her own money, family money, no talking. We used to go to the shows in Italy, and Anna would be the only one of us who would then actually buy clothes from the designers. Here's this young girl going to Milan and Paris, and that could be a bit of a shock for anyone else, but not to Anna. Nothing fazed her, because she was used to going to the best places and meeting top people in her personal life. Nothing would impress, unless it was really good. But I don't really remember ever seeing her really impressed. She wasn't the sort of person who would say, "Gosh, that's amazing." She was always on one level, but taking everything in. Despite Anna's contention that she had no master plan for herself in the fashion mag game, she expressed a major goal less than 2 years after she joined Harper's and Queen. In the fall of 1971, the staff began planning features for the Christmas issue. All of us, Anna, myself, and Jennifer, had to do a page, our ideal Christmas present, recalls Murphy. Mine was a trip to a desert island. But Anna's goal was to be appointed editor of Vogue. That's what her dream was. Since Vogue was a competitor, Landals didn't see fit to mention Anna's fantasy in his magazine. Instead, she appeared in the late November issue of Harper's and Queen, a bi-monthly at the time, with 5 of her colleagues under a headline that read, 6 H&Q employees describe their ideal Christmas presents, illustrated by models' photos. And there she was, smashing in her 3rd modeling assignment. Now, the copy of this particular picture is a little bit curious. You know, everything's always so... You read things that were written back then, you're like, what are y'all talking about? But the copy reads, Anna Wintour, fashion assistant, 21, would like to taste St. Moritz living next year and hopes to escape from the underground. Quilt-trousered Japanese workwoman division, wearing this ankle-length white fox coat and diamond feather brooch from Collingwood, and leading this large Pyrenean mountain dog from Harrods. Then it goes on to say, you know, hair by so-and-so, this is how much the coat costs, this is how much the chair in the picture costs, etc., etc. Back then, being a fashion editor involved very little writing, just a simple intro to a layout now and then, if that. The problem was, Anna couldn't write, asserts Landal, which he thought was odd for the daughter of a newspaper editor. Well, if you don't read, you can't write. That's just the reality there. But neither could Jennifer Hawking write, which would eventually result in her dismissal by Landals and a bitchy battle for her job involving Anna. But that was still down the road. We never wrote words, acknowledges Hawking. We weren't asked to write. We write down the facts. Blue shoes. We were fashion editors. We selected clothes. We didn't write about them. Moreover, Anna had problems getting across what needed to be written. Anna couldn't express her thoughts about fashion, adds Landal. We had a sub-editor who said to me, that effing Anna Wintour, she's given me this folder and I don't know what to write because she doesn't tell me anything. And I said, don't be unkind about Anna. One day she will be our boss. How prophetic. During Anna's tenure, most of her writing was done by Laura Pank, who had to devise kicky sentences for the ridiculous fashion sets and headlines for these weird things that Anna told me were wonderful, so I just believed it, really, and I wrote it that way. Anna briefed Pank in a voice that still echoed in her ears years later. She sounded like sandpaper, really grating, like a door that needed oiling, a floorboard, something really painful. Otherwise, she tried to be mysterious behind the glasses, honing her persona. Of all the people working on fashion news, Anna certainly dressed as she shot, notes Pank. She actually lived fashion, wore her dark glasses all the time in and out, was immensely stylish and pin-thin. I think she existed on lettuce leaves. Pank was convinced, and people gossiped, that Anna was restricting her diet. That's her personality, she asserts. She's a control freak, always had to be in control of herself and everybody else. The most difficult aspect of the job, whether one was a junior like Anna or a senior like Hawking, was learning to work smoothly with prima donna photographers who wanted only one thing, their creative freedom. The fashion editor's job was to keep control of the shoot. Anna seemed to have a preternatural ability. She worked well with some of the best of them back then. Alex Chatelaine in Paris and talented neophyte James Wedge in London, whom Anna knew, so no problem there. He was part of the group of cool older men in her social sphere, a player in the London boutique scene where Anna had first met him. Wedge had just started shooting professionally when Anna began giving him assignments. Before long, they became romantically involved. She was in good company. Among his girlfriends was the model Pat Booth, who became a popular novelist, and after Anna, the actress Helen Mirren, with whom he had a long, tempestuous relationship. Anna hired me as a photographer, and that's how we met. And then we became lovers, acknowledges Wedge, who says he succeeded Richard Neville. When I met her, she was still with Richard, and they were sort of splitting up. Anna and Wedge, a decade older, were together for about 18 months. Since Wedge considered himself a loner, and Anna had few female friends, he described their relationship as a very private affair. When he first met Anna, he thought of her as a Vogue type. Though she was working for Harper's, he observed, she had that Vogue attitude, very snooty about fashion, and seemed to know it all. In fact, much of their relationship revolved around fashion, as had her involvement with Stephen Bobroff. We were lovers, we went out together, and we worked together at the same time, says Wedge, and most of our time together was spent talking about fashion and never seemed to depart from that. It was always the same subject. Wedge knew Bobroff professionally. Unlike Bobroff, though, Wedge and Anna didn't set up housekeeping together. He had an enchanting cottage in a forest in the countryside where they spent weekends together, and Anna had an elegant apartment near Earl's Court in the city. Anna was very determined, ambitious. It was pretty obvious in the way she acted. She had very strong views on fashion and the work we were doing together, he says. Often, you can be employed by a fashion editor because they like your work and they leave all the decisions up to you. But she had a lot to say on how my work, the photos, was to be achieved. But I was quite a young photographer in the sense that I hadn't been working very long, so it was nice to work with someone like Anna who was so strong-minded. Anna took Wedge to Fillmore Gardens and introduced her new beau to her father, who he found very frosty. After several visits, Wedge came away thinking, runs through the family. Even though Wedge fancied Anna, there were aspects of her personality that he found irritating or just plain odd. The first had to do with her eating habits. She'd order coffee, he remembers clearly, and have cream put on top, and then she'd just eat the cream off with a spoon and never touch the coffee. And when the food came, she'd just pick at it and never eat it. The other issue that he found odd had to do with Anna's relationship with her colleagues at the magazine, which was underscored for Wedge during a week-long shoot in Greece. Normally on those sort of occasions, the crew gets up early, has breakfast together, do the day's shoot, and then you all meet up for dinner in the evening. But with Anna, it was different. She never had dinner with us, had her meals sent to her room and ate alone. It always struck me how aloof she was, sort of a sign not to eat with everyone in the evenings. It's unusual. It is unusual, but if you're an anorexic, you can't let people see you eat because you're not going to eat and you don't want people to comment on it. So you devise these weird things like, well, I'm just going to eat in my room and just expect everyone to sort of be okay with this oddity. But everyone knows. It's like, that's the thing that's so crazy about anorexics. I think no one's going to notice they're not eating anything. We notice. Also, you're bone thin. But, these little plans and schemes and how to get around people noticing you not eating. Like, you think we're stupid? We see it. We know it. Like all couples, they had tiffs. It might have been over something Wedge had said that ticked off Anna, but when she got angry, she didn't explode. She went the opposite way. She became cold, did not speak. The relationship eventually bottomed out. We just went our separate ways, he says. Nothing special happened to end it. It was the 70s, If you remember what happened, you weren't really there. Wedge left London, moved to the country, and began painting. Sometime in the early mid-90s, Anna showed up unexpectedly at his London studio during the Christmas holiday to say hello. Looking slightly older, but her style was the same. The bob, still very slim, but a little bit more aloof, a little crisper. How is it possible? They hadn't spoken for many years, and he was pleasantly surprised to see her. But it wasn't until long after she left that he discovered she had gotten married and had children, none of which she told him during her visit, which didn't surprise Wedge, who always felt she was secretive. Despite spending quite some time with her as her boyfriend, I knew very little about her, he notes. It's amazing. With Anna, you look back and you think how little you know of her. Jennifer Hawking recalls that Wedge was very keen on Anna, and she knows of at least one other photographer, a Frenchman, with whom Anna was involved while working at Harper's in Queen. When we used to go to Paris, she would see him. She had a busy life, but on the surface, she never came in looking as if she'd spent a night out. She always looked calm and collected. You couldn't read her life by talking to her. She certainly attracted interesting guys, intelligent ones. But she did it quietly. She didn't boast. Didn't say, I'm doing this or that. A lot of the shoots Anna did, she did with James Wedge. She used to get things out of the photographers nobody else could. So maybe she had her own methods. I don't know. Men obviously liked her. And that is why she always got these amazing photos. Manipulating men has always been one of Anna's great strengths. With the photographers, she flirted, complimented, ego-stroked, and slyly directed in order to get the best out of them. Moreover, as she became more experienced as an editor, she was savvy enough to take their advice, to use the shoots they recommended and the photos they determined were the best from a particular shoot, rather than making her own personal choice. That way, in most instances, she could do no wrong. Hawking, who knew a thing or two about handling men, was amazed that such a young thing like Anna could do it as she did, and made it appear so easy. A valise, as it turns out, underscored it all for her. We'd go to the shows, and she'd always be able to get men to carry her suitcase, she said, remembering those moments years later. I'm tall, and no one would ever carry my suitcase, and I used to say, my God, in my next life, I'm going to look like Anna Wintour. She looked frail, she looked fragile, and obviously that appeals to a lot of men. Men loved her. Anna would stand there with the fringe hanging down over her eyes, looking very sort of helpless, a waif-like look, but far from being a waif, and the men would line up. From the beginning of her career, Anna had an eye for interesting locations. One memorable and magical shoot for Harper's and Queen that she oversaw was for a collection of clothing by Japanese designers, a favorite of Anna's through the 70s and 80s. The magazine wouldn't spring for an expensive and time-consuming location shoot in Asia, so Anna, working with Wedge, found a farm that grew watercress in the English countryside that had from a distance the look of a rice paddy, and that's where she posed the models, wearing peasant hats and Japanese fashions. Fantastic, recalls Hawking. She could organize. She could make sure people sent in the props and clothing she wanted, and she got very good work out of the photographers. Her mind was always sharp and crystal clear. I don't think I've ever met anyone as clever as her. Years later, Anna looked back at her work at Harper's and Queen and noted that she considered the fashion shoots to be amorous affairs. She recalled being sent to India for a week-long assignment with nothing more than 20 pounds, which in those days was less than $50. When I asked my editor, how am I supposed to pay for everything? He said, oh, just find a Maharaja with a palace. And I think I did. So, I'm glad to know she has a skill set. Her skill set is manipulating people, so that's unfortunate. But she does seem to have the ability to extract from her environment the outcome she anticipates. So going to a photo shoot, she has in her mind the vision of what she wants, and she does seem to be able to make that vision happen by manipulating the photographers and by controlling her environment. And quite frankly, honestly, if we look at her personality so far, this control freak, what could be more perfect for somebody with her personality and makeup to go into a photo shoot and be basically the director of the whole thing? I mean, that is who she is. She wants to control her environment. So her very nature would be perfected if she was in an environment like a photo shoot where she gets to be the dictator of the scene. I found that chapter to be extremely satisfying. I feel like we learned a lot about her personality, about the way she worked, and also about what she was good at. So many questions of mine have been answered, which I'm grateful for. Let's read chapter 10 real quick. It's very short, so let's fit it into the end of this episode. This chapter is entitled Family Affairs. From the age of 15, Anna had begun hearing well-founded rumors that her father was a womanizer. Later, gossip items alluding to his extracurricular affairs began appearing in the grovel gossip column of London's bitchy satirical magazine Private Eye. The column linked him to a married woman and made light by calling him Sir Charles because he never received knighthood, which he felt he deserved. Arthur Schlesinger Jr., who had been introduced to the woman by Wintour, says, it was evident to an old friend his interest in her had a certain sexual tinge. She was very vivacious, sexy, and bright, and Charles was a powerful editor by this time. Womanizing was not the central theme of his life, but he liked intelligent, pretty women, and I suppose he went to bed with them. Charles had a British reserve about things and was not given to confessionalism. Wintour once showed up with the beauty at the Evening Standard's Washington, D.C. bureau, staying with her at the Madison Hotel, according to the paper's then correspondent in the nation's capital, Jeremy Campbell, who had long heard the stories about his boss's affairs. But Wintour attempted to dispel the rumors. Charles said to me, whatever you hear, she's my traveling companion, and nothing more. Traveling companion, that just seems sexual. Campbell's reaction? I suspended belief. Alex Walker, who had become close to Noni Wintour before, during, and after her marriage, believes that the tensions that had long existed between her and her husband had reached their zenith in the late 60s and early 70s. The children were growing up. Noni was deeply involved in her social work. Charles consequently became more involved in the feminine comforts that a number of women offered him. Charles would have absolutely never talked about any of this. He would have thought that that would have been a breach of faith in marriage. If he had any real confidants, they were probably the other women that he was with. He became the kind of husband who relaxes with a mistress to get rid of the tensions of home life. Besides the bold-faced names with whom he had liaisons, Wintour rifled through secretaries at the paper, one after another, and poor old Noni was at home, recounts a female former Evening Standard reporter. He was very frigid and horrible to her. They gave wonderful cocktail parties, but they were very unhappy together. Anna knew of her father's wanderings from what she saw and heard firsthand at home, from Private Eye, and from the whisperings in the circle in which she ran. Always very private, she never talked about the gossip items. She was very reserved that way, notes Jennifer Hawking. She wouldn't have discussed it. And Anna was not a gossipy person who you could sit around and have a good dish with. Her father's philandering was difficult for her to deal with, or to comprehend intelligently, says Vivian Lasky. Anna thought that some of the women reporters who worked at the Standard weren't just protégés. Anna sensed something. One was invited along to the country, was included in a lot of things, even with Noni there, and often he would take her to parties if Noni didn't want to go. Anna couldn't go to her mother or her father and say, "What's all this about?" She's so terribly British, observes Lasky. We had many conversations about our fathers being womanizers. She knew of his infidelities, was aware he had protégés, and she forgave him everything. Early on, when Private Eye first started reporting the gossip, she tended to side privately with her father. It was tough. But we both loved and idolized our fathers and didn't quite know what to do with our feelings. I don't even know if it was anger. It was just sort of like, what does this all mean? In a childish and naive way, Anna seemed to understand her father's philandering more than she could Melvin Lasky's, mainly because Bridget Lasky was chic and beautiful as opposed to her own frumpy mother. I remember Anna wondering, why would your father go any further than your mother? Why would he, if he's got the most beautiful woman? Anna seemed to have the mindset of a Cosmo girl, that it's all to do with a sexy look and sex, with little understanding that relationships are far more complex. I adored Charles. He was charismatic and flirtatious, Lasky says, and I knew his flaws. I don't want to put any blame on Noni. She didn't deserve that kind of a treatment. But once in a while, she could have gone out with her husband. Noni never went anywhere with him. Charles would buy Noni jewelry for her birthday, but she'd say she didn't want it. It's as if he didn't really know her. That is so the way you think, though, as a kid. If you ever hear about anybody cheating on a spouse and they happen to be married to a really attractive person, it's always like, what? How? Why? And it's something that I finally realized as an adult, that sometimes the person that is cheated on might have nothing physically wrong with them. They might be stunningly good looking. And the other person might be a complete and total dog. But there's some kind of connection there. And that is almost that's an unsettling thing that you don't want to think about as a kid. That there might be something about you that is the thing that drove them away. Not how you physically look, but something literally about your personality. I remember being a little frightened by that reality. On September 4th, 1970, 9 months after Anna had joined Harper's and Queen, Noni received an urgent transatlantic call from her sister Jean in New York. Their mother, Anna Gilkinson Baker, had died at the age of 81. The matriarch had been widowed for almost 4 years, ever since pneumonia claimed the life of her renowned Harvard corporate law professor husband, Ralph Jackson Baker, at 78. Hospitalized for a week, Baker died on November 5th, 1966, 2 days after his granddaughter Anna's 17th birthday. Anna's grandmother had been found dead in the Baker's Boston apartment where Noni had spent her formative years. The cause of her mother's death, though, was kept secret from the other members on the American side. Unlike Ralph Baker, who had long suffered from heart disease and chronic bronchitis, which was the cause of his death, Anna Baker did not die a natural death or from illness. Apparently long depressed, Anna's grandmother committed suicide, taking an overdose of the barbiturate Nembutal. Anna's maternal grandfather had invested his money wisely and left an impressive estate of $2,279,578.62 in 1966 dollars, of which Anna was a beneficiary. Her grandmother, when she died, had a personal worth, excluding her husband's sizable trust for her, of $204,162.93, of which Anna also was an heir. On November 3rd, 1970, 2 months after her grandmother's death, Anna celebrated her 21st birthday at a party thrown by her parents at the posh Savoy Hotel. She now had substantial income at her disposal from the family trusts, the kind of money that would allow her to take a low-paying fashion magazine job, such as the one at Harper and Queen, and still live the high life, have chic apartments, wear beautiful clothes, drive a trendy car, spend nights on the town, and date outrageous men. Well, she's just had the road paved for her, has she not? How delightful. Here's the thing. Everybody in life has things that are dealt to them that are positives, and everybody has things that are dealt to them that are negatives, and it's our job to make the best of what we've got. I still think I would rather be born poor and not have a wretched personality that I had to overcome, because how does one even begin to overcome a wretched disposition? I think it can be done, but I think by the time you realize you have a wretched disposition, it's only because you've been alienated by others and everyone secretly hates you. And then you've got to figure out, okay, how do I fix this? Wouldn't you rather just be born like being awesome but poor? You can fix that. You can get money. Drive and determination will get you what you need. But what can you do about a bad personality? Well, I guess apparently you can be the editor of Vogue. But no one will like you. And imagine going through life just being utterly disdained. How depressing. Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow for chapters 11 and 12. I really enjoyed that chapter. I think this has been one of my favorite episodes so far. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Bye.